Hello, my name is Dennis Maurice Dumpson, and I'm founder and principal consultant of Invest Black. Invest Black is a consultancy that supports nonprofits and small businesses in developing inclusive, community centered, culturally competent, anti racist cultures, operations, and strategies. In addition, we support through our philanthropy in the Black and Empty Fund, which we call BAY. We provide modest and meaningful funding for community centered ideas that transform and embrace Black folk and historically marginalized communities. And I've been working in philanthropy probably for the last 17, 18 years in various capacities. Currently, I'm as a consultant thinking about the full strategic life of a nonprofit organization. But previously, I've been a vice president of development, a director of development, a development manager. I've been a chief development officer, and I've had the opportunity to be able to see fundraising through a lot of different lenses. So today we're going to be talking about some of the core principles of fundraising, and particularly thinking about leaders in fundraising, people who are new to fundraising, and especially board members that are engaging in fundraising. We want to identify how we can be supportive and helpful to the needs of an organization. And that requires a lot of thought. It requires some due diligence, and it mostly requires us being able to analyze needs. One of the big questions that oftentimes comes up is, how do I move my restricted funding to being general operating funding or unrestricted funding to some end? And to a great extent, all funding has restrictions, so it's a very nebulous world that we're working in. But what we really begin to start to analyze when we look at the fundraising landscape is that there is an opportunity for us to be able to have more fundraising that is supportive, more philanthropy coming in that is supportive of our organizational needs once we're able to identify them. Three ways that I identify organizations' needs is by whether they are perennial, periodic, or if they are passive. Those three areas are very telling to tell you what an organization's position is. Because if it is perennial, that means that you're dealing with needs that are persistent. They're lifelong. As long as the organization is here, these needs are not going anywhere. Then sometimes they are periodic. And periodic, that means that there might be something that you do consistently. It could be a program that you offer, or a need to keep the organization running, but it's not something. It comes maybe annually, maybe it comes every 6 months when you need to kind of fund it or start it, but it's essential to the mission in some way. And then you have those things that are passive. And when we say passive, we mean things that they're happening, they're consistent, they're always going on, to an extent, but different from being perennial, where they're everlasting. These things are things that you don't necessarily have to think about. They kind of get worked out over time, but you still need to be mindful that they exist. They need to be a part of the bottom line. Your revenue needs to support them, but they're passive needs in the sense that, there are ways for you to be able to manage them differently. And they have maybe a smidge less urgency than some of the other programmatic needs. So once we've defined whether or not the need is perennial, periodic, or passive, we then have to try to figure out where the philanthropy needs to come from to be able to support that. But before we go there, I want to talk to people, particularly to board members, to people who are maybe new to a C-suite role and have subject matter expertise in operations or accounting or some other avenue of program and haven't really dealt with fundraising, and you want to kind of say, like, how can I engage with this with some more efficiency? These are the things that we want to start thinking about. So I want to go through each of these really briefly just to say what our contributions can look like. So in analyzing what a perennial need is, perennial by definition just means something everlasting, something that is consistent. When analyzing what a perennial need is, what we want to be able to figure out is, what is the programmatic value? How are programs affected by this work? Number two, we want to think about the market and visibility. How will this shine when we are sharing this with our audiences, and not just for vanity of an organization, but also how will this be able to support our funders with understanding how organizations like us and us are able to be supported in deeper ways? And then the third part is, does it make financial sense? And I know sometimes we're so committed to mission that it's hard for us to analyze that, but it's very important that we question the financial solvency of all of our programs. What would the organization look like if we did not direct our funding, time, energy, and resources to this particular area, program, or service? So that's to say, if you are a child care organization, and one of your programs, that signature that's loved by the community, is your early morning breakfast program, right? And it's not underwritten by government funding for whatever reason, and you have to use independent institutional philanthropy or individual philanthropy to be able to get to be able to support it. Is that something that is essential for your organization? And if it did not exist, how would people be affected? How would our mission be affected? How would the organization change? And not just negatively, but also positively. If we didn't have this, do we have, additional money to put in another area that really is of great need to our community and that supports our mission in a particular way? So once we get that figured out, we can then figure out, okay, man, programmatically, people are served greatly by being able to have this breakfast program. We can't stop it because the people need it. From a market perspective, it is out of the park. Like, people know us from it. They are telling people. We've been on 3 news shows because of it. We have a lot of resources we can say that this makes sense for. However, when we get to the third one, it may be that it's not financially solvent. And it doesn't mean it has to go. It just means that that's where the work is and that's where the need is. Well, now the avenues that I might travel to be able to fund that perennial need may be different, because I need people that are going to invest in the goodwill we brokered with community, our program being strong, right? I need people to invest in the high levels of visibility and good visibility that we get from doing this program. That's the marketing portion of it. And I need them to support the financial deficit that we receive, even though this is doing so much good for the organization and for the communities that we partner and work with. That's the very important synergy that we're trying to do. So now I might have previously been going to individuals and saying, hey, donate food, give us, canned goods, help us get this, bring in a breakfast for the morning. Or I might go to institutional funders and say, hey, for us to be able to do this program well, we need $2,500 every week. And if we need somebody to be able to finance that, 52 weeks out of the year, that may be the way that I approach it the other way. But now I also have another opportunity. We have high levels of visibility. I can go to corporate funders, and I can go to corporations and to CSR, corporate social responsibility. And I can say, hey, we have a great visibility opportunity for you. Not to be able to sell, our community, to a market, but to say, like, hey, we are doing something really good. You do good work that's aligned with this. You always want to make sure there's alignment with the people that you go to. But you do good work in your area. We do good work in our area. We see a lot of opportunity for you to be able to have visibility in this work. So now you're able to even underwrite even more how you finance this. So now it may become a program that is sponsored by, XYZ organization, corporation, or company. But what that does for the program is it gives it a layer of support that it did not once have. You're now able um, to be able to monetize the program through, but also make sure that it has solvency so that the work of the program, the benefits that it offers the community, never has to end. So now when we have that in stages, we then can be able to think about, man, how can we get these perennial needs to be satisfied? And then we can go in and think about deeper questions about making sure that these are multi-year gifts. You don't want people to give you for 1 year, then every year you have to re-engage them around funding. No, we want them to give us this in multi-year funding as much as possible, and be invested in this community in a deep way. You want to make sure that there is that there's enough funding to keep the program done, even if corporate funders leave out. So if their strategies change, if the visibility is no longer aligned with what their shareholder values are, what their stakeholders want, you need to be prepared to be able to have the program, even if it's at a bare bones level. You need to be able to continue that program without that funding too. You just want to make sure that you're able to make sure that staff is able to have a reasonable condition of work environment to be able to do this work. And that's something we oftentimes don't think about, particularly if you're a board member or new to the C-suite, or to a director role, or new to a role that's highly aligned with fundraising. We don't often think about how are we engaging with with the culture of work in our internal processes as well. This is a huge part of how we're able to build strong fundraising systems. So now we've addressed the perennial, the periodic, and the passive needs. We've addressed that we need to be able to figure out whether or not they are programmatic, marketing, visibility, and that they are adding to the solvency of the organization. And once we know that, we're now able to start addressing how we can be able to contribute to that organization. And in part two of this discussion, what we'll discuss is how can we begin to use our understanding of perennial, periodic, and passive needs to advance the ways that we're able to be supportive to fundraising teams in ways that are equitable, that are supportive to work culture, that support mission and vision of organizations, and the program sets of core values as well, and that also keeps us financially aligned with what our goals are. So, take this work, this is the first start to it, and start asking your fundraising teams, your executive directors, your directors of fundraising. If you're a big organization, your chief development officer or vice president of development or what have you, start asking them the questions of, hey, I learned this space of perennial, everlasting needs and these periodic needs, things that come in and out, and then the passive needs. Can you give me some buckets of what fits into these things? So I want to try to figure out how I can be able to bring my friends in on this, how I can start funding this in certain ways, if I can be able to have somebody in my network support these different things. And I want to know like how I can be able to support financially to get this together. Or if I work there, hey, I want to see how our programming can be able to align better with our fundraising needs in some way. So that way we're all working together. Those are the ways we can use these understanding of needs with and to make it as valuable as possible to the needs of our organizations and the people that we partner with in our communities. So that's part one. Part two is coming. Hey everybody, this is Dennis, and I just want to invite you to be a part of part two of this lesson. If you'd like to learn more, if this was helpful to you in any way, or you want to share it with your organizations in any way, send me an email. My email is founder@investblk.org. And you can send an email so that we can have a session together. You can see one of my pre-recorded sessions and I can send those to you, or you can join our mailing list and you'll have all types of goodies that come into your inbox. Your choice. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope we have a chance to continue to talk, learn, and grow together. Peace.